watching on Twitch. Okay, it looks like we're live now. Let me just double confirm. But hello everyone. I guess we can say that welcome to the Q&A and Critique number 41 that we do every Thursday at around 1700 UTC, or in my local time around midday. We're here in the voice chat of the Work Arena in Arundel's Discord server. We've got Darren, I'm Kinda Drunk, we've got Terry, Leonard, Plebes, Shaq, ShadeSnoop, which is the artist of today, and Sir Penguin. So thanks for joining us today, and I hope you guys enjoy. We have 3 topics that we're going to be taking a look at. Just 3D things. I'm not sure if he's going to show up later, but he had a very interesting question about camera animation. So we're going to just quickly work through that and take a look at different animated camera types, which I have a scene here, which I created with the Painterly to quickly kind of showcase the effect. So after that, we're also going to take a look at the GLTF with I'm Kinda Drunk, and basically try to take a look at different glass techniques which may work in the engine or not. It's basically understanding the PBR principled shader and also how to do some hacks to make real-time glass. And then we're going to take a look at ShadeSnoop's art, which is a very lovely little piece here in some blinds and a little couch and a little statue in a room. So we're going to take a closer look at that with 4 different topics that I would like to show you, which is basically shape language, texture contrast, what is the message, and also give you some advice and praise, Shade. So ShadeSnoop, would you like to begin today with this piece of art before we move on to the more theoretical things?
Yeah, sure. I just woke up and got the notification. I'm sorry for my voice.
That's okay. I started late as well. I had some technical issues just earlier as well, so no problem. So tell me about your piece. I'd love to know a lot more about your piece. This is looking really nice. The render quality is gone up from the last piece that you showed us, so it's really great to see that progress.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, so basically, I mean, the photo you see on the right is by one of my friends. He's actually a professional photographer, and I just saw this in my Instagram feeds, and so just when I saw it, I thought that I'd love to like recreate something like that. And I also had downloaded this model from British Museum. I think they have 3 scans of Roman emperors, and this is a statue of Marcus Aurelius. So I had this lying around, so I just thought I'd put 2 and 2 together, and that's basically it. Not
And the
much.
rest
And the
is
painting you
history.
see on the back is another one of my renders that I actually also submitted here for review. Not
And the
much.
rest
And the
is
painting you
history.
see like half of it.
All right, nice. Sorry, I had a bit of a noise in the background there. Sorry about that. I really like, hey, this is your older render here, the one that almost looks like a painted one. Yes, that's the one you're referring to.
Yes.
Nice little detail there. I love the glass material that you used on the glass case, especially with that edge up here, which is nice and green.
Yeah, this one was a material that I don't know why I downloaded it from somewhere, but I really like it. I always, when I have some glass material, I like to throw this one out just to see how it looks. And then I used the glossy pass to overlay you see the shadow of, like, not the shadow, but the reflection of the blinds on the right side of the glass box.
Yes, here on the
Yeah,
right.
this one. Yeah. This wasn't really visible in the original render, but I used the glossy pass to kind of get this
To bring it back out.
look. Yes.
Gotcha. I quite like
And the
also
shadow,
of the shadows here and the material on the subsurface there is nice.
yeah, there's some subsurface. And the shadow of the bust. The only thing I played with composition was I tried to get the shadow somewhat chair, so as if someone's actually sitting on the chair.
Nice. So what is the message you want to tell with this image? Is the one like the person that was sitting on the chair? Or what's the general message here? Do you have like a small story you wanted to say on top of the person sitting on the chair, or with the Nero, or sorry, not the Emperor?
I don't think I was really thinking about that, but it was just really basically for me to combine these two elements together. But I did make sure I wasn't sure. I had a plant in the corner. I took that out. There was a light. I also took that out just because it was distracting. So I just wanted to keep it simple. Just only basically is 3 or 4 things.
Very nice. All right. So Darren has a question for you, actually. He's asked us here in the chat, if you guys have more questions or things to say, you can feel free to use it. But basically, he's asking, what is the engine you used for rendering?
Oh, cycles. I always use cycles. I wanted to experiment with Corona or Octane, but I never have to download it and then I've worked with another shader, so I never really actually did download another render engine. Well, I just always use cycles, and then post-processing. Right now I'm doing in Lightroom, but I wanted to give Natron a shot because Blender Compositor is very slow on my laptop.
All right, yeah. Have you tried the full frame compositor from the experimental builds?
No, is it better?
Yeah, it's a lot faster for sure. You'll just have to go to your compositor options, and instead of using the execution mode tiled, use full frame. And when you're in the preferences, just make sure you turn on the full frame compositor.
Oh, thanks. Because I really like all the different passes and cryptomats, and in Lightroom I can really work with that.
Very nice. Yeah, slowly but surely the Blender compositor is becoming more capable. So you use Lightroom.
So
Yeah, sorry.
yeah, so the only compositing I did in Blender was using the glossy pass on the glass.
On the glass, right here.
Everything else is pretty much in, yeah.
The glass turned out great. Okay, cool. So here's, does anybody else have any comments? What do you guys think of this piece? Do you like it? Do you feel like it's
pretty cool.
Yeah, you love
it? The glass is incredible.
Yeah, that glass is so nice.
How did you manage to get the green reflection on the glass?
Right here.
Yeah, I didn't make this material. I'll try to find from where I downloaded, because I had this in my long time. I think this was might be the one in. I saw a Blender conference about glass, and they showed 2 or 3 material. Basically, just uses I think the light length node in the camera to change the color of the glass. I'm not sure though.
That's interesting. I would love to have that glass later.
Yeah, I will definitely send you the link of the glass and the Blender conference too, but I'm pretty sure it's from there.
Great. Okay. Oh, good news, guys. Just 3D Things has dropped in, so we can go through the camera animations later. Darren says he's blown away.
Yeah.
Oh, he reminds
actually,
you of the
yeah. So there used to be an image of blown away guy, and it was used in a Memorex commercial. I almost feel like the leaning into the simplicity. The original picture had the simplicity of just a cactus, just an image. The contrast in the blown away guy, and I like the contrast of the Roman emperor, and particularly like who would have an cased glass Roman emperor as like the only feature in the room, and just leaning into that even more. Like the southwest corner, the rug, and the carpet.
Yep.
Yeah, the footstand. Uh, I was trying to figure out how would I have done this to even lean into almost the absurdity of having this, like, this is not a fish tank. This is like an encased bust of a Roman emperor, right? Like, what could I do in the lower left third to make the emperor stick out even more, be more the focal point? And I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah, that's true. So we have, like, if we're taking a look at the message, what you mentioned in the like from last week, if you were here last week as well, ShadeSnoop, right?
Yes.
And we had a look at your, I think we last week or the week before, we had a look at your architecture, and we had a look at the concept of the visual grammar, right? So if you guys remember,
I actually watched all the videos by Marco Bucci. That was really great resource.
Oh yeah, excellent, right? Super good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to quickly go through this concept concerning a little bit about shape language and text to contrast to bring out your message. So you've done an excellent job. I love your piece. I think it looks really good. Concerning the story, obviously my eye is drawn towards the emperor in the area, and the seat kind of gets a little bit lost. So in this concept, when we talked about contrast from last week and shape this is the next step where we take in shape language. So in shape language, I guess you could say, is the concept of using color and texture to bring out the shapes inside your image. So you have shape here, you have like a shape here, you have like another shape here. And these are the shapes that you're working with to create a general language of your image. So this here is definitely your focal point, which is good. So this is where we're supposed to be like paying attention, this box, right? That's great. It's in a very nice location concerning the Fibonacci spiral, or in the thirds. Very nice. But now I just need to think about, like, how do we frame this shape with everything else? So I'm going to take off the blur for a moment and think about how you're framing this character. So you got to think, you have two types of textures. You have a dark clear texture, and you have a stripy texture, right? And this is bringing out the contrast of the image. And you also have the contrast of the things that's partly in the light or in the dark, and the thing that's completely in the light with its texture, fine detail. So in this case, we can think about, okay, so how can we surround or lead the person to look at this hero inside the area, and how can we use this chair, this frame? So if we take a closer look at how you have framed the scene, for example, the environment is actually quite clever, the way that you have it framed, which is very good. Notice that it's surrounding the area. It's like you're surrounding the subject around different things, which is really nice. This is really good. I think this was excellent. You've captured that concept very well. But now that kind of concept, you kind of need to think about the texture. So here we have midtones with your texture, very high detail here. But in this case, we probably need to implement the rest of the texture. Everything else here would need to have less texture, or a more homogeneous texture, and also a shape, a more clear shape to push into the frame of the hero. So in this case, the problem that you have at the moment, don't take it personally, this is just my personal thing, is that you have a blob here, you have another blob here, another blob here, really clear blob here, then you have a lot of nice dark detail here of this sofa. And though your images, you wanted somebody who's casually lounging around by the window that has the emperor in the frame, that message is lost because the framing language that you're using with the shape of your textures is not complementing the hero. So in this case, you need to think about, okay, what do I do? So what you could do is you could take the general shape of the couch, and you could start to fill it in with a little bit of light, like this, and push it around like that, so that it starts to appear inside the world. And you could take this dark light and darken it, like darken the case even more, darken the wall or the shadows, or darken this area a little bit more, and maybe even darken over here completely along with the image, with the way that you're lighting, so that your general shape is pointing towards your hero. So that's like you're using a concept of, and you also could brighten up the light on your actual case. So maybe you could have like an extra strong light coming in from the window hitting the actual hero point, or you can frame this even more. So in this case, you're using your concept of framing of your different lights or your shapes to bring out the actual shape of your image, so that it's understood what is happening, so that I can kind of get a hierarchy of what I'm supposed to look. Another thing is you could also maybe bring this down a little bit. How you do this in 3D is going to be tricky, and this is where you can start hacking things a little bit. Like, for example, maybe you could have a spotlight over in this point over here in the corner, and the spotlight could be used to bring out the light on the couch, so that you can frame the couch and what's on the couch as the second part of the story that complements the frame of the case of the actual character. But in general, you did an excellent job where you framed the actual hero asset inside of the glass case. You framed it inside the light as well. This was an excellent idea. You complemented him by surrounding him by elements to kind of box him in, and you created the assets right here to show the case that he's casual, they're relaxing. All of this is really, really nice. So you're getting much better. I mean, excellent work. And
Thank you.
it's like the more study you put into this, the faster, the more clear or legible your message will be. In this case, the message is there, but I have to stop and I have to search the message. Everybody noticed the Emperor first, which is your hero piece. Excellent. You did this really well. Now it's just working the complements and the flow of your message into that hero a little bit. So that was like you're applying what we've done the past couple of weeks really well.
Thank you.
All right. So ShadeSnoop, keep it coming. I love it every week. And also, Slink is not feeling so well today, but I like his pieces as well. If you guys have pieces or art that you like to take a look at live next time, well, feel free to drop it into the Q&A&Critique chat here in the server, in Discord server. So now I have a question for you. I'm kind of drunk. You were talking about GLTFs, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask you, first of all, could you clarify your question and also the context of why your question?
My question is, you previously taught me how to export the normal, albedo, and metallic as the GLTF, but with glass it doesn't work, and I can't seem to find a way to export glass material as in GLB because it cannot bake the glass like the other textures.
That's
I
right.
know we're probably not going to get reflections or everything because it's not live, but I'm thinking about a way to fake it. My main sorry, I'm really nervous. I tried to use the Windows 3D. That's been my guide,
Okay.
and I could work with all of the passes that you taught me, but with glass, it simply doesn't understand it. It doesn't compile.
Yeah, glass is a different thing that you need to work through. So have you tried making glass inside of a game engine before?
No, never.
Do you know any theory about raster game engine glass or materials?
No, no.
Okay, well, I'll give you a quick crash course. Wait, have you done glass with Eevee before?
No, only with cycles.
Only with cycles. Okay. So I'm going to give you a quick little crash course to everybody here to show you how to do raster glass, basically. What are the limitations and how do you work around it? So basically the difference between cycles and Eevee is that cycles, if we switch over here to cycles, cycles is a ray traced engine, meaning it's using little rays that shoot out from the camera. That's why we see all this little bit of noise as rays hit the material and then bounce back to the camera. And so rays shoot from the light and they hit the material and they shoot in. So this is a ray traced engine, but GLTF or a web viewer here does not do this. Game engines do not do this. And basically because it's a very highly it's a lot of calculations to do this. So we use a raster engine. So a raster engine is a lot like Eevee, which is where we use the scene world or the scene lights. And as you can see, it's all calculated on your GPU, almost real time. And also in the internet, it will work in your browser. So to do glass, if we go into our shading here, we use the principled BSDF, which is basically the Disney standard, which is also the GLTF standard. With the GLTF standard, we have a number of parameters that we need to look at. The things that we have is sometimes the engines can support transmission, which is a fake refraction, and they support alpha blend, or alpha clip. So how does alpha blend and alpha clip work? Basically, things can go transparent, but they don't cause any type of refraction. So let's take a look at this glass material, and we'll go into our material settings. Inside the material settings that we can also find here. And the material settings, we have a blend mode. I'll just zoom in nice and quickly. So the blend mode here can be alpha clip, alpha hashed, and alpha blend. So GLTF can use alpha blend or it can use alpha clip. So in this case, we're going to use alpha blend, and we're going to make the shadow mode whatever opaque. And with that, we can take a look that the material starts to become transparent. If we want to, we can turn on backface culling so that it's less crazy. And there we go, we have an alpha material. And using the alpha slider, we can create this shape into the material. And this is good to go. So now if we select everything inside the collection and we save it as a GLTF, let's just save it to a folder that I will find later. GLTF binary, sure, why not? We're going to include selected objects for the active collection, transform, geometry, animation, those things are not too necessary. And we're just going to export it. And if we go into the library that we just used and go into our viewer, it should remember the alpha transparency. And here it is. All right, so now we have alpha transparency on our GLTF. This is the first part, all right? That's the basics. So you can see that the transparency of the glass is on the actual material here. Let's just change the display, show the wireframe. No, background, let's change the background. There you go. So you can see that the glass is completely transparent. That's the alpha blend. But it doesn't look incredible, right? So some engines you can use, for example, the concept of, let's just make sure the ink material doesn't have any alpha blend.
Trace?
Yes?
When you say blend, what we're talking about two different materials and taking, yeah, can you dig into alpha blend a little bit? What exactly are we blending?
Blending is kind of like, do you know in Photoshop where you have one layer and in the other layer you have an alpha?
So we're talking about opacity or transparency.
That's basically what it is, exactly. So for example, I have this opacity here at 100%, and then it with alpha with the layer below. So if I put it to...
Okay, so it's the layer below. So is it doing the normals between the two materials? Like what does it know to blend? Is it just saying how much is transmitting? Like I guess what I'm saying is when you're talking about transmission versus blend.
As you can see, so for example, imagine the background house is one layer, and this transparent 3D object is another group of layers on the geometry. As you can see, it just goes directly over the other with an opacity. So I'm blending the background with the geometry opacity in the material. So the alpha blend is basically just blend by using alpha.
Blend by using alpha with respect to the camera's point of view.
Exactly, and whatever's behind the geometry. So that's why you can
Got
see
it.
that
Got it.
here at the lid, I have more geometry, so it is more opaque than the part that has less geometry, which is the glass here, because I have multiple layers of blending. All right? So,
Yep, got it.
what are the techniques we can use? Sometimes we can use transmission as well. If we use transmission, this is going to add like a fake sense of refraction. So I'm going to make the alpha a little bit stronger and just use transmission. If we go in full screen here with the Eevee engine, transmission is going to try to like pretend that this has some kind of refraction. And so I'm going to use this. I'm going to put this back onto opaque just to have the full effect. So it's going to recompile. All right. So as you can see, we can't see a lot. Where is the transmission? You would have to change the IOI. Here we go. So if we go back, you can see that if we change the IOI, which is the index of refraction, we can start to see this kind of like fake glass effect. All right. So this fake glass effect that we have here, which is kind of like bending the light around through the object with this transmission. So transmission is basically allow the light to bend through, but because we're using raster graphics, this is an illusion. This is just fake. So because we need it for performance, it's easier for the computer to fake something than to actually realistically calculate it. So with the raster engine, which is Eevee, Unreal Engine, Unity, WebGL, all of the things that uses GLTFs, then we use the fakeness. So here's the fake object. We're going to select everything. We're going to export it again as a GLTF. Let's just go back to the library, and we'll call this the transmission version. And now let's go back to our browser. Here it is. Grab the library. Where is it? Did I finish? Oh, I gotta select a file. Export GLTF. I didn't do import. Transmission. And then I go back to my browser, library, and here's the file. It's loaded up. And this particular browser, as you can see, this is where we have the effect of the transmission. As you can see, it's looking through it with some blurriness based on the engine. Depends on the engine. This will depend heavily on the engine if it allows transmission. But we can use this blurriness, which is kind of like refracting the light behind the actual object, and we can use this concept to help us create some kind of glass, which looks actually pretty nice here. All right, so this is the two tools that we can use to create GLTF glass. We can use transmission and we can use alpha, and then on top of that we can use alpha clip. So do you guys know what alpha clip is?
No,
No?
no.
Okay, so let's go here and we'll just turn the settings down to alpha clip. And we're going to use a Fresnel. So basically a Fresnel is this kind of shape. I'm going to use a range node. And I'm going to plug the range node and I'm going to clamp it a little bit. So I'm going to put the minimum lower and the maximum higher to kind of create this Fresnel shape. And I'm going to plug it into the alpha. So if I take a look at this object and I go back to alpha clip, let me just compile. As you can see, and full screen, whatever is white is opaque and whatever is black is transparent. 100% transparent. And there is a threshold. Whatever is above 0.5 is now not transparent, and whatever is below 0.5 is 100% transparent. This is alpha clip. This is where you like create a mask, where anything is white is not transparent and everything that's black is transparent. This is using alpha clip. As far as I know, GLTF also allows to use alpha clip, which means, but I'm not sure it can use Fresnel. I would have to experiment that. Actually, let's give it a go. Export the GLTF. We'll call this one clip. Let's see if it works in the engine, yeah? Drum roll. Are you guys ready? Okay, so here's the clip version. There we go. And it worked, but the Fresnel did not. So now you can see within the texture, the white parts or the lighter parts of the texture is transparent and the darker parts are not transparent. So in this case, I could use a texture clip to create some effects on the glass, and I can use another material. So this is kind of cool. So if I bake, actually this actually is perfect for my uses for this particular case. I could use alpha clip to create kind of like a blemish or dirt or anything on the glass. I can use a mixture of the alpha for the full transparency of the glass, and I can use transmission to kind of create the fake refraction of the glass. If I use all of these three with some good textures, I can create some pretty cool game ready glass. So I'm kind of drunk. Is this too complex or is it clear? Do you have
No, I think I got it.
yeah?
The only thing is that the alpha options does not appear in cycles, right?
Cycles uses it, yeah. But if you're going to work with GLTF, I recommend you develop inside Eevee. Because Cycles is used for visual effects and like full-on realistic rendering. But if you're going to work with games, use Eevee. And this is the power of Eevee. Eevee practically works the same as Unreal Engine. It also works the same as Unity. It works the same as GLTF in most cases. Except you just have to kind of work around the problem that anything that is connected to a principal DSTF other than textures will not work. So that's the limitation. So these nodes here, the map range and Fresnel, will not work, but textures will work. So you could bake your Fresnel, for example, which is actually impossible, but you could create something similar to this, like edge detection or whatever, bake that, turn it into a texture, then export that texture with the principal BSDF settings for the type of glass that you want. So let's put it all together. We've got, I'm going to make two materials, okay? So I'm going to create the bottle. I'm going to duplicate the bottle. I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to call this glass. And in the new material, I'm going to go to alpha 0.6. I'm going to turn it to alpha blend. I'm going to turn up my transmission. In this case, I'm not sure if the IOR is actually calculated in this particular engine, but I'll keep it like this. So if I zoom out like this, this is my glass. This is looking okay, pretty good. If I take a look at the other material, the ink material, I'm going to turn this to opaque, and the cork is also going to be opaque. So if I zoom out, let's just remove the alpha option. So now we have this kind of like, I gotta make sure the outside material actually has, let's just remove, sorry, the other bottle. I'm just gonna delete it. Right, so I have a glass bottle, I have the cork, I have the ink. The ink is going to be opaque, and I have this glass bottle. Maybe I can make it more transparent. Like that, maybe. And on top of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, separate this, and in this one, I'm going to create a new glass, which I'm just going to call, make it still, use the displacement modifier a tiny bit of displacement. Use another glass material, like copy this one. I'm going to call this grunge. And with the grunge, I'm going to use the texture, the same texture into the alpha over here. And I'm going to turn this to alpha clip. So now I put that to alpha clip. So now I have like this glass clip texture. I'm also going to up the threshold just a little bit. There we go. And let's export this and just see how it looks, right? So select everything, export as GLTF. Now we'll put this into the glass. Export that. And now let's, the moment of truth time. Go back to the engine. And let's drag in this new jar into the engine. And alright, so this engine doesn't allow me to use transmission and alpha at the same time. But here we go. If we take a closer look, it's only using alpha blend. But because I have one with alpha clip and the other one without, I've just kind of created kind of like a variable alpha on the glass up here, as you can see. There we go. So this means I may have to use two materials, one or two meshes in this case. One is for the alpha and the other one is for the transmission. But it will depend heavily on the engine that you use. This is just the GLTF viewer, which is a very simple one. But depending on your game engine, you'll have to take a look at what is supported and what is not. But GLTF supports both alpha and transmission technically, as you can see here. So, does that, I hope that helps you. I'm kind of drunk. What do you think?
No, it did. It's way better than what I could achieve with myself.
Excellent. Mr. Shawarma Splitter, you missed it again. Don't worry. ShadeSnoop also shares his glass in a video of how to render your glass. And all of them are on Blender Kit. Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's actually a really good video. It really talks in detail about the theory of glass materials in Blender. And he shows three variations. One you can use for art quiz. It's really like very less taxing on the GPU. And I think the other two are like, if you want to get a realistic look. Another thing I forgot to mention, that the material actually has a completely opaque shadow eye, probably the way it's made. So I had to do like two passes. I mean, not two passes, but use two meshes for it.
Yeah, as I was doing earlier with this one too. Sometimes you need two meshes with two separate properties. One is a shadow caster, the other one is not. This is very typical in Eevee as well. It's like I use one object for the actual glass and I use another object for the shadow. And also a cool thing about Eevee is that you also have hashed shadows. So a hashed shadow is basically using a dithered shadow concept. And the ditheredness, it kind of gives you kind of a gradient shadow. Even though it's like technically alpha clip, it uses a pixel per pixel hash. And this creates kind of a soft shadow, which you can use to help create a better type of glass shadow. So there's a lot of different techniques you can use to create fake real-time glass. All right, so Just 3D Things is here, but he's currently got no microphone, but I'm glad you're here till the end. So I hope you guys found this useful. I'm going to move on to the next piece, which is the next question. So I have the scene here. Well, actually not this one, but the other scene. This one. And I probably need some performance, so let me just drop this to wireframe. And I'll just hide this one here. And let's go back to...
You did this on a Royale?
Yes, this piece here was the last week's Blender Royale, or on Monday.
Dre's, you're a machine, man.
Yeah, it's currently running slow because I have this open, I think. But
no, I said you are.
Oh, well, if you, I do have my Blender Royales on my Patreon. If you guys want to get download them, a little bit of support goes a long way. Actually, got a lot of inflation here in this country. But if you guys, you can download whatever I do there. So it comes with a little like to get like the fossil effect. Okay, so Just 3D Things. Okay, so I have the scene set up for you, which is basically a street scene. So you asked me earlier this week about how to do camera animations. What are the different types? And how do you define it per shot? So here in this scene, let me just go back into my animation editor and turn on vertex colors. Turn on vertex colors so we can roughly see what's happening. I have this small little scene. It's basically a street, and it has a couple of props in the street. I have this character here. He's kind of like standing in front of a vending machine of some kind, and he's just like standing by some trash, maybe over here. There's some things in the background, some signs, and there's a big city over here in the background here. So that's basically the general concept of the world. Some extra towers and things like that. And we're going to focus on some cameras for some establishing shots. So I wanted to ask you guys, if you want to open up your microphone and talk, or write in the chat, what do you guys know about camera movement?
I normally switch to camera. How does it call it? When the viewport and the camera move together.
Yeah, it's locked.
Yeah, camera lock. So I used path. I used paths to draw the camera. So hand draw a path, back it to the path. It's all camera movement.
Nice. Use paths. Okay, that's good.
Do you mean like pan, tilt, that kind of movement?
Yes, exactly.
I think I've ever animated my camera.
Never before?
Never.
Okay. Well,
I
today's
think I'll start doing it now.
yeah, today's your lucky day. So we have pan, we have tilt. What else do we have? You mentioned another one as well. Okay, so I'm going to share a quick little link with the different types of camera movements. Basically, camera movement is very free because we're in 3D space, but you need to think about a number of different things. If you're a camera on somebody's shoulder, or you have a camera in somebody's hand, or you have a camera on a gimbal, you have a camera on a drone, you have a camera on a crane. This crane has a boom that lengthens, goes up and goes down, and the camera has a tilt, and it moves around and rotates, and maybe has the crane has some wheels, and the base moves as well. You can create. There are different types of camera rigs that you can create as well within Blender, which is kind of nice. But I think you need to like find the add-on that does this. But I think there's an add-on for this. Let me just double check. camera, yes, camera rigs. So if you turn on the camera rigs add-on, you can go to add. I'll just quickly show you. Go back to main and go back to the normal view. So if I have, like, for example, sorry, I have an annoying key map. This one, just delete. Okay, so if I have, for example, a camera crane, I can use this camera crane, which is basically this type of rig here. So if I go into pose mode, I have like a base. This base can move it either forwards. If I move the camera forwards, this is basically what you would call a track. So this is a track. What I can also do with, or dolly, track and dolly, I don't remember the names exactly, but one of them is left and right, the other one is forward and backwards. And then after that, we have the movements of the actual camera, which is based on a different types of things that you can do. So for example, if you move the camera, tilt the camera, or rotate the camera up and then down, or other ways around, this is when you tilt the camera. And if you use rotate left and rotate right, this is where you pan the camera. So panning is just rotating X and Y, or X, and tilt is rotating Y. You can also use Z as well to rotate your cameras as well. But that's usually to make people feel sick. Another thing you can do is you have movements with your crane. So if you have like this crane shape, so if I move this crane out like this, or let's see if this what does the trick. Yeah, I can make the crane extend higher, but now I have this crane movement around this particular actual object. So let me just see if I can actually control. Why don't I have control of these, of the rig? Maybe because it's locked. So let me just make sure everything is unlocked. Arm shape rotation. Huh? Why can't I select that bone? It's weird. I can select that bone, and that bone, but not the deformed bones. But they're all okay. Camera height. Is it a deformed bone? Yes. There we go. But I can't select the other one. Crane arm. Okay, but now I can. So basically, this crane arm, I can move it up like this, or move it down like this. I can also rotate the other arm, which is this one here, and I can, there, it doesn't allow me, damn it. Okay, sometimes it's better to make your own rigs. But basically, that's the general concept of how you like think about a camera. A camera movement is you have different types of X, Y, and Z, rotation and location. And now you can start thinking about, okay, so what type of shots do I use to create the different types of moods or moments that you want to do. So I'm here in this shot here, right? Let's go to my animation layout and read the text. Darren says camera movement is a masterpiece. For example, with Jurassic Park or other things. ShadeSnoop has missed the part about the add-on. Also, if you go, the add-on's called Camera Rigs, and it is built in with Blender, so you can get it for free. Just to give you a general idea what you can do. Okay, so let's take a look at the article. Let me just copy and paste it. Where did it go? Here it is. So this article, basically, I'll paste it in the chat. This has a number of different explanations, rough. It's a blog post, so it has a general idea. For example, you have a tracking shot, which is the one I mentioned earlier, where the camera moves physically on a trolley on some wheels, left and right. forwards or backwards. That's a tracking shot. You can also do gimbals or steady cams or motorized vehicles or a drone. All of these are shots that just moves in a straight line in a single direction. Here's you have a dolly shot, which is the type of shot where the camera operates the entire camera forwards or backwards along a track, which is very similar except it's pointing straight ahead generally. You have a truck shot, which is moves left or right. So tracking shot is like the farther goal of like moving a camera in a single direction, and then dolly is forward and backwards, truck is left and right, and then you have the pan. A pan is where you pivot or rotate the camera left and right, what I showed you. A whip pan or a swish pan is like the same thing, just very quick. A tilt shot is the one that I showed you where you tilt on the Z axis, or use, or no, sorry, and the Y axis up and down, rotation up and down. You can also use the one that I showed earlier with a crane shot, where you actually have the camera attached to a crane. Or you can use an aerial shot. An aerial shot is like what I showed, like a drone. It also could be a tracking shot or a rotation shot or some others. And then you have other ones like pedestal shots, which is just like a simple shot from a vertical camera movement, raises or lowers relative in relation to the subject. So pedestal is like it's standing in the same point, and you're just kind of looking at the point at the person's face, for example, and you move the camera up or down, and it's always looking at the person's face. That's like where you point at something. And then you have your handheld shot, which is a simulation of using it in your hand. A zoom shot, where you zoom in and out with the lens. A rack focus. You have all of these, 13 of them. And the rack focus is where you change focus of your lens. So for example, in cinema, you have a person called a focus puller. A focus puller tries to keep your character in focus all the time. So a rack focus is a concept where you might be tracking into a character, but you're also changing the aperture of the lens. You're changing the lens of the camera while you're focusing on the character, and though you're pulling out, you maintain focus on that character. And then finally we have a dolly zoom, which is similar to what I was just talking to you as well. So rack focus doesn't actually move, dolly zoom does move, but they just change the focus. So if we go back to our scene, that's basically, I highly recommend you read the small descriptions of the blog post as a general idea. You can always search more about this, and with that we can move on. So let's do some practical applications, yeah? What do you guys think? So we can kind of have a visual idea. So first things first, we have the tracking shot. So if this is my camera, and this is my character over here. So I'm going to do basically a shot from a drone. So let's freeze the camera, lock the camera to the view using the lock to view inside the view panel, view, lock to camera, camera to view, or you can use the button that comes with Beef Artist to just lock directly from the viewport or from the header, which I like. Blender used to have this, but they took it away for some reason. Not sure why. But anyway, so I have this character here, and I'm going to come in with a drone like this, and I'm just going to go to frame 0. I'm going to select the camera. So let me just get a moment, and I'm going to go to my animation, record its translation and its rotation. These are the two things that you're going to record always: location and rotation. And then when I have that, I'm going to go to, say, for example, the end of the animation, which is going to be more or less 10 seconds. And basically in the 3D view, I'm going to move the camera to the side here, like this. Kind of show that I'm in the street, and I'm going to record the X movement in global, and I just created, if we press play, I'll just make sure the keyframes are linear. So as you can see in the view here, this is a tracking shot. I'm just holding the camera's rotation still, and I'm moving the camera in one direction. I'm using a drone shot. So that's a tracking shot.
Can I just jump in here a sec?
Yeah, sure.
So we do a lot of static things. So we're talking about motion pictures, right? Animations, things where things are moving. And the camera is the way the director is telling the audience what is important. So in this example, we might start thinking about the robot at the vending machine. But the sheer act of moving the camera away from the character is telling the audience, don't pay attention to the character specifically. Pay attention to the environment. And the reason I bring this up is they say that all shots should be motivated. Like, what's the point of this camera movement? And if you start with what's the point of the movement, then which shot to choose becomes much more, makes a lot more sense.
Correct. So in this case, what I did is I'm trying to tell a small story that I'm supposed to look inside the street. But then from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the camera and I'm going to use a similar movement. So I'm going to reset the rotation, put it up like this, about 90 degrees, flip it around about 180 degrees. And I'm going to now put the camera to the side. And now I'm going to use the next type of camera called a dolly shot. No, sorry, a truck shot. So this is like, imagine you're on a truck inside the street. And now in the next frame over here, I'm going to move the truck in the same direction as I was tracking here to show kind of like in a long shot of the character in the vending machine. So let's go back to the beginning, which probably should also copy the rotation. Boom, there we go. So I have my tracking shot to show the street. Now that's a bit too fast, so let me just bring it down slower. So I have my tracking shot, then back to my dolly shot. So now I've got my dolly shot. Now let's do something a little bit different. I'm going to use a, what you call a truck. So that was a truck shot. So now we're going to do a dolly shot. So I'm just going to record a frame here, delete this frame here, go to the next frame, and I'm going to go into basically and cut to his head like this with the vending machine. And I'm going to move in forwards. So I'm going to use the camera's location movement and I'm going to move the camera forwards without changing the lens. So that is what you would call a dolly shot. So we've got the tracking shot, we've got the tracking shot, tracking and tracking, and then we have the dolly shot, which is zooming in. But I probably should just make sure all my keyframes are linear. All right, so we're zooming in. There we go. Now it's like a straight line. It's just moving in a little bit. This could be with a gimbal, it could be with an actual rails, it could be anything. So the next type of shot we have after that, just to show what he's looking at. So here, getting closer, we see the guy on the street. Ah, what is he looking at? Let's zoom into what he's looking at, and then we can change the shot. And the next shot that we're going to look at is called a pan shot. So in this case, I'm going to move the camera here, and I'm going to rotate to his face, zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to just kind of look at it a bit, and then move over to here, and I'm just going to rotate the shot a little bit, just so I can kind of see what he's kind of looking at, like this. Just a rotation, left and right. So here, I got this shot here, and he's just looking at this direction over here, and that is a pan. A small pan, but that's a pan, pretty much. To kind of show the direction that he's looking at that thing. So after that, we're going to use the next type of shot, which is, what was the next one? A whip pan. So a whip pan is basically a concept of moving the camera really fast to kind of make a focus onto something. So in this case, we could have him looking at something like this, maybe looking at here, and then in a very quick, like it'll be holding still for a moment. So I'm going to hold the camera still here, and then I'm going to quickly move the camera down to another moment like this, just rotation. And in this case, I'm going to use keyframes with, I guess you could say, Bezier. And then I'm going to hold the shot for a while. So it's like this, then whoop, he's looking down at that. That is a whip shot, basically, where you move a very quick moment, whoop, and he looks at the thing over there. So in this shot here, I'm going to turn this to, ooh, and here, whoop. So there's a little bit of kickback, whoop. And I'm going to make this keyframe the same auto clamped. So whoop, there we go. That was nicer, whoop. And I'm going to also use this into automatic mode a little bit more. And this one with auto clamped. So it does a double bounce, whoop. And so that shot there is basically a whip shot. It's something that I'm looking at nice and quickly. So after that, we've got the whip shot. Now we can do a tilt shot. So in this tilt shot here, we're going to go back to the picture of his face. Maybe I'm going to change the lens of the camera a little bit so that it's like, oh, this will work fine. So if you remember, a pan shot is left and right, a tilt shot is basically up and down. So now we can like use the shot and just rotate in this axis and make it look up like that. And we'll just make sure these two keyframes are linear. So now he's just looking up at the thing. And that's it. That's all he needed to know. So now we have that clear. We've got a tilt shot, a pan shot, we've got a whip shot, we've got track, dolly, truck, and now we're going into the next shot, which is an aerial shot, which is very similar to what we had earlier with the drone. So an aerial shot is basically I can go from the street up here and I can show his dilemma. You know, he's having a problem here. And this aerial shot could do anything. It could be anything. But basically, I'm just going to hold the shot here a little bit, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit to show, or zoom out to show that he's having a hard time. Make him feel smaller in the world. So there it is. He's zooming out a little bit. That's a nice aerial shot to show that he's feeling very lonely. And then I'm going to use the next shot, which is a handheld shot. So basically, handheld is has animation that is very similar to being held by a hand. So if I go back to just over his shoulder like this, to show that he's kind of like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. And then I just kind of like, I'm holding it with my hand, a little bit of rotation, and then I go up like this, and I move it like that, and I kind of like hold it as if I'm holding it in my hand, kind of like trying to control things. I grab all of these keyframes, and I convert them to Bezier, and then I'm like, there he is. It's kind of like, obviously you can use a lot more noise and a lot more like motion captured things that Ian Hubert has left for free, which is really nice. But that gives you an idea that the hand is holding the camera, kind of trying to control the movement, but there's a lot of external forces pulling the camera. This could also be true if your camera is, for example, attached to a helicopter, and the helicopter or jet is flying through space, and there's an explosion and the shockwave kind of pushes it around and he dodges an asteroid, and the camera's kind of like, whoa, shaking, and get, you know, all of that concept of external factors affecting the camera is basically what you would do with a handheld shot. And then after that, we can do a zoom shot, which is basically very similar to whiplash, just forwards, I guess you could say. So I'm going to go back to the shot where we have the money thing on the thing here that we're looking at, and I'm just going to zoom into it like this, nice and close, and I'll just make this linear again. Usually with cameras, you try to keep your animation or your movements very minimal, because sometimes when you have cameras moving around too much, the person doesn't know where to look. If you keep your camera movements minimal, for example, one position A, another position B, it helps you to keep your shots readable and have some intention. And this is where things become the exception. So for example, this zoom shot here is I can go into my camera settings, go into my focal length, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to move the camera at the same time. And I'm going to zoom in specifically close by duplicating my focal length. So zoom in, whoa! There, that was a zoom in shot. And it's kind of unnerving, it's kind of crazy. It's like, what the hell is happening? That's exactly what I wanted. I'm going to keep this linear. So whoop, zoom in to something very important. He's having a hard time. Say that
right?
again.
Sorry. That's the Vertigo shot, right?
Very similar, exactly. This is what you would call a Dolly Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to change back to another shot. I'm just going to zoom out again, even more, and just put it onto his head, just to show that he's like looking at it like this. And I'm not going to move the camera this time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just use the focal length and zoom in like this. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. So one is called the Dolly focus, like this, and the other one is called a rack focus. So the camera is holding still and is zooming in with the camera lens like this, and he's like, boom, boom, and he's like, no. So if we watch the whole story, go back to the beginning, we've got, whoops, let's pick a shot, which is also an aerial shot, could be anything. A fixed camera, we've got the truck shot, moving left and right. We've got the dolly shot, where we move the camera in, the lens stays the same. We've got a pan shot, where he's looking from left to right, and then we have a whip shot. Then we have a tilt shot. Then we have an aerial shot with the track out. We have a handheld shot. We've got a dolly zoom and the other zoom. The rack zoom and the dolly zoom. So those are the types of shots that you can work with to help you tell your story, to share the message. But that's basically it. So, just 3D things. Are you still here? Yep. What do you think? Does this answer your question? He says, this is amazing. Thank you so much. I'm Kinda Drunk also has a really interesting video of like I guess what you would call this would be a track shot actually. Hang on, let me just try to load it up correctly. Yep. So notice there's a track and the shot is just going along the track. That's why it's called a track shot. Nice one on Kinda Drunk. It's really cool. Like, where am I going? Just following a track. Because yeah, basically the term track shot comes from a train track. You put like a trolley on a train track, and that's where the camera is, and it's attached to the train track, and that's how you move it. So just 3 things, thank you so much. You're going to use this in your upcoming projects. Excellent. Shawma just says he's just learned the word whoop. Good, I'm glad you learned a lot as well. Okay, you have to go. Well, thanks for hanging out. I'm going to finish the stream here too. Oh, you're welcome. So there we go. ShadeSnoop, thank you for everything today. And thanks, Darren, again for your input. Thanks, I'm kind of drunk, for your question about GLTF. I hope the class is useful. And also Just 3D Things, thanks for your question.
Thank you so much, Trace, for taking your time.
No worries. If you feel like I'm worth it, I do have a Patreon and a Ko-Fi, so feel free. It would make my day for sure. So I'll see you guys same time, same place next week. And if you have a question or a piece of art, feel free to leave it inside Arundel's Discord server in the Q&A and critique. And next week I'll prepare a quick little presentation, and maybe we can open up the mics and answer questions or ask questions. Feel free. I'm looking forward to it. So have a great week and have a good weekend.
See ya.
Yeah, have a good one.
Bye-bye.